Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is LL3's latest podcast. My name is Craig, and I am in the swampy mangroves of South Florida. It's a cloudy day on a Saturday, December 28th, 2013. And today I want to be talking about the NATO 3. Just did a little homework on them, keeping tabs. I've been complacent, and one of my colleagues from the Facebook page told me about it, about their trial. So I believe I could spread the message over here via podcast. And just to let you know that their trial will be on June 6, 2014. Alright? And it's going to be a real interesting case. Because we all know, too, Chicago, the city of Chicago, are very corrupt. It's like one cesspool, according with judicialwatch.org. So I'm just really curious how this case is going to end, and it should last like 1 to 3 weeks, but it's going to be interesting, like, jury selection and opening statements, so forth. So it can last till like late February of next month of 2014. So, but I want to address an archive entitled "Revealed: The Story Behind NATO 3 Domestic Terrorism Arrest." This was published Friday, June 21st, 2013 by Matt Stroud and Steve Horn. And just to let you know, I will post this on my Spreaker account, including the court schedule as well. Alright, let's begin here. Maybe pretty long, so I'm going to have to do 2 parts. I'll just have to wing it, so bear with me. Accused of domestic terrorism in the course of the Chicago NATO summit, Brian Church, Brent Brettley, and Jared Chase were arguably victims of the police entrapment and the use of Red Squad tactics the Chicago police were formerly enjoined from employing. When local and federal police conducted a no-knock midnight search warrant raid in May 2012 at an apartment in Chicago's Bridgeport neighborhood, it looked at first like a failed mission. Yes, the police seized a group of 11 political activists, in Chicago to protest an international summit of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or acronym NATO. But most of the arrestees were released without charge, and rumors soon began to swirl. Police chained protesters to benches for 18 hours. One television station reported Chicago Police Department sources told Truthout the raid would unearth Molotov cocktails, homemade firebombs made of breakable glass bottles, and gasoline. But they found beer brewing equipment instead. If anybody would like some, one Bridgeport tenant told Truthout, I would like to offer them a sip of my beer. Then things turned. One of the 11 Bridgeport arrestees, it turned out 2 were undercover cops. And beer brewing equipment wasn't the only thing the authorities alleged they found before and after the arrest. They found 4 dark beer bottles containing clear liquid alleged to be gasoline. They found a pint can containing 4 cloths alleged by the prosecution to be gas-soaked. Further items allegedly found included another pint can containing 4 glass vials, each containing saturated cotton, along with 4 gas-soaked pieces of cloth, an empty gas can, a black tactical vest, and a black gas mask. They found a compound bow and 9 arrows. They found 2 knives in sheaths, 2 swords in sheaths, and a set of handcuffs. They found a metal throwing star, a sharp handheld blade. They found a PVC pipe with a black flag attached. Authorities also found a printed photo of the female undercover officer who led SWAT teams to Bridgeport in the first place. This litany of materials, according to what police told Truthout, belonged to 3 men visiting Chicago from Florida to protest the NATO summit. and allegedly to set parts of the Windy City aflame. The dubbed NATO 3 media reports they face maximum sentences of 85 years in prison, a piece if convicted, under a decade-old Illinois law that had never been used before and is without ever carrying out an attack. Unlike the Boston bombers, the NATO 3 hadn't set off any bombs prior to their arrest. Unlike the Fort Hood shooter, they hadn't shot anyone. They hadn't thrown Molotov cocktails. They hadn't even activated dummy detonators, as was the case with 5 Cleveland activists in a similar domestic terrorism investigation last year. They just ran their mouths. They just talked about revolution. They allegedly went far enough into a conspiracy to elicit major charges. To this day, more than a year after their arrest in Bridgeport, the NATO 3 are still sitting in Chicago's Cook County Jail, awaiting their trial, which is set to begin on September 16th, one day before the two-year anniversary of September 17, 2011, launch of Occupy Wall Street. Just to revise that, January 6th of 2014, they're gonna have their case. And if the 3 are convicted in September, it could be set a troubling precedent far beyond the borders of Illinois. Who are the NATO 3? While Occupy Wall Street helped ramp up the possibility for major protests in action in cities such as Chicago, it also brought together young activists who might never have met otherwise. Case in point, Chase and Betterly. The duo met in Washington, D.C. at an Occupy protest. They were arrested arm in arm in front of the White House while protesting the National Defense Authorization Act. It wasn't the first arrest for either man. Years ago, when Chase was 18 and living with folks in Keene, New Hampshire, he was charged with attempt to commit an assault and reckless endangerment after allegedly pulling a knife on another man, according to the New Hampshire Union leader. A month later, Chase received more charges, this time for first-degree assault and conduct after an accident which earned him 9 months in jail. In that incident, Chase was found guilty of hitting a man with a car after the two had a fist fight, said the Union leader article. The victim's impact with the car damaged the windshield, but the man was not seriously injured. The conduct after an accident charge was added because Chase drove off after striking the man. He spent 6 months in jail. He had trouble with drugs when he got out. He violated his probation 3 times and then eventually moved to Boston, where he stayed for years and worked as a cook at P.F. Chang's. Late last year, Chase left his life in Boston. Later, he headed to Rhode Island briefly, then to Washington, D.C. After Chase and Betterly were arrested outside the White House, they headed toward Oakland Park, Florida, just north of Fort Lauderdale, where Betterly's from, before heading to Miami. Chase was arrested again as part of a group during Occupy Miami before heading off to Chicago. That group was found with bolt cutters, a baseball bat, and a sledgehammer, but they were not charged. The Miami New Times described Betterly, with good looks and dreadlocks, as a hippie who attended rainbow gatherings. He had a criminal record in Florida, but nothing violent. Last September, he and a friend were drunk when they broke into a high school, did some after-hours swimming, and broke a cafeteria window. Police picked him up. Betterly was released, but he still faces a pending burglary charge. New Times reported that Betterly was known among those at Occupy Miami for his creativity and commitment to fighting foreclosures, while Chase was seen as more enigmatic. The chain smoker was a computer whiz who spent days wandering around downtown. and talking to homeless people. On March 24th, 2012, Occupy Miami was raided by police, and Chase was there when it happened. It was depicted on Chase's Facebook page. In fact, underneath a picture of a SWAT team outside an apartment complex housing members of Occupy Miami. If I'm correct, that's possibly in Overtown, but I could be mistaken. Occupy's open door for infiltration. Enter Mo and Nadia. When it comes to protecting it from prosecution, one of Occupy's movement's truest merits, the inclusion of the 99% and acceptance of anyone willing to lend a hand, is also a fatal flaw. CBT undercover officers reportedly began their investigation in February 2012 as part of a 90-day assignment to monitor NATO protests. Undercover officers soon entered Occupy Chicago, posing as activists, and did so with ease. Occupy Chicago organizer Matthew McLaughlin explained the hectic nature of preparations in the months leading up to the NATO summit protest. Every day of the week we had an action going on, so we were making sure that went off without a hitch, he told us. Then we had out-of-towners pouring in, so we had to take care of that. We weren't really prepared to deal with undercover police officers, he continued. That's how two undercover officers going by the names Mo and Nadia would soon become the NATO's three downfall. In early March, an undercover officer, a big man, a little over 6 feet tall, bearded and dark-featured, in his mid-30s, with broad shoulders, wearing jeans and a black hoodie and a black winter cap, was first spotted by central organizers of the NATO summit protest at a planned meeting. He went by Mo. According to Joe Asselbiker of the Committee to Stop FBI Repression, during the small group introductions, Mo said he became an activist because he had been laid off from a job. Shit blew it, he said, and Occupy Chicago started. No further explanation was needed. Mo will show up by a public Occupy event later in March with a woman who would always be by his side, a young woman who went by Nadia Yokohana. Nadia was tall, with tan skin. Some Occupy sources told Truth Out she claimed to be Syrian. Many activists said she was charming and bubbly. They were attracted to her seemingly genuine excitement to get involved with activism. If Mo was the brawn to the two-person team, Nadia was the brains. Nadia showed up alongside Mo at Occupy General Assembly, a completely open meeting for anyone new to the movement, to introduce themselves, saying they were cousins. She talked with Occupy Chicago organizer David Orlikoff, who oversaw a number of listservs and who generally passed information about meetings to anyone who needed it. Nadia seemingly saw this organizer as undangerous and useful. She kept in touch with him to monitor when various meetings were taking place and rallies were being planned, as well as to get email addresses of everyone involved in Occupy Chicago. Mo and Nadia were on the 90-day temporary duty undercover assignment as part of the CPD Field Intelligence Team 7550, which you could acronym for FIT 7150. The team was tasked while attending Occupy Chicago, an anarchist movement event, for the purpose of observing and listening to reports of any planned criminal activity to run up to the NATO summit, according to pre-trial court documents. Truth Out visited the apartments of both Mo and Gloves, and both denied comment. Woodlawn. The Woodlawn Mental Health Clinic on Chicago's South Side was one of 6 city-operated facilities